So to be honest, I don't really know how to start a video. So I guess we'll just start the video then and see how that goes. Introductions are awkward, you guys. If you're into otaku culture, you may have heard or seen or even owned an anime wall scroll before. I personally don't own any anime wall scrolls. I do have this hand towel though. And if we put a picture of a wall scroll over it, we can pretend it's a wall scroll, because it kind of looks like I own one then. Not that much, but, you know, pretending. But what I'd like to talk about today is the history of wall scrolls, which most people probably haven't thought too much about. I don't know if most people even care about this, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. So regardless of whether you thought about it or not, I promise you, the idea of an anime wall scroll wasn't pioneered by Hatsune Miku being perved on by Pumpkin. Interestingly enough, wall scrolls as a concept aren't native to Japan. Or at least, most of the available historical records we have suggest that it was actually an import from China. Now, it used to be thought that wall scrolls had come to China by way of India as part of the spread of Buddhism. However, in the mid-20th century, a tomb was discovered that was thought to belong to the wife of a Chinese marquis. Inside of this tomb were two T-shaped wall scrolls. And after more excavation and cataloging of the site, it was believed by researchers that all of the artifacts within the tomb had predated these Buddhist wall scrolls from India by at least 1,000 years, suggesting that the concept of the wall scroll came about organically in China. Funnily enough, most Asian cultures would end up developing their own kind of scroll in some form or another. Take, for instance, Tibet, who created a type of wall hanging called a thangkas. Thangkas? I'm not sure. I'm going to go with thangkas. And if we're splitting hairs here, and I would like to, technically, a thangkas is not a wall scroll. It is a wall hanging. The difference being, wall scrolls typically can be rolled up for storage purposes. A thangkas is more typically mounted statically onto a backing and then hung on the wall. Now, this distinction of having a cloth scroll that can be rolled and hung on a wall is what helps suggest that wall scrolls came to Japan by way of China. Now, while they may have come from China originally, once in Japan, wall scrolls began to develop a new set of customs and traditions that would further define them. It's also worth mentioning, and once again, please forgive my Western inability to speak other languages, traditionally called a kakejiku. A kakejiku is also different from a makimono, which is very similar in function and design. However, the differentiating trait of a makimono is that typically it will be unrolled along a flat surface, whereas the kakejiku was meant to be hung on the wall. Traditionally, kakejiku were associated with being hung in the most prominent room of the house. However, they were also designed to traditionally be interchangeable and moved from room to room around the house, and even taken down and replaced. This was typically associated with the changing of the seasons. And I'm sure you're wondering by this point, how does this all relate to anime? Good question. For that, we have to jump ahead in history to the weird and wondrous year of 1997. Or possibly 1998. The sources are a little unclear about which it was. Which is weird, because the sources were more clearly defined about things that happened thousands of years ago, but not things that happened 23 years ago. Regardless, we also have to venture, albeit briefly, to the United States to learn the story. The CEO of the anime merchandise company, Great Eastern Entertainment, Kent Sue, took a trip to Japan in the fledgling years of his company. While he was there, he would learn about the more modern side to wall scrolls, which had somewhat distanced themselves from their spiritual roots and became more of a pop culture decoration, typically featuring pictures of celebrities or sports teams. While it's unclear if Great Eastern Entertainment was the one to originate the idea of the anime wall scroll, what is clear is that once Kent returned to America, he would introduce his idea to the business, which would start selling them hand over fist. So while we can't definitively say Great Eastern Entertainment originated the anime wall scroll, I think it would be fair to say they really helped to popularize the idea. Some researchers suggest, however, that the heyday of the anime wall scroll only really lasted for those first few years in the late 90s. It's not that you can't still get an anime wall scroll, you absolutely can. It's just that the bulk of the business has shifted from wall scrolls to more statically flat posters. Posters have cornered the market for a few reasons, but the primary two are that just in general, they're cheaper to produce, which means they're cheaper to sell, which means they're cheaper to buy, and they're also a lot easier to display in a physical storefront. And I know in the time and place we're in right now, the idea of a physical store seems far off and confusing, but they existed once. They might someday exist again, and if you go to an anime merchandise store, you'll probably see more posters than wall scrolls. Eventually, even Great Eastern Entertainment would go on to admit that while they still do sell wall scrolls, a lot more of their business these days is done in posters. Now, with that all said, I doubt the anime wall scroll is going anywhere anytime soon. While they're not for everyone, they're a really nice way to show an affinity for a piece of media. When you buy an officially licensed one, and you really should buy an officially licensed one, typically, if it's not licensed, there's a good chance that the art was stolen from the artist. Don't do that. But if you buy an officially licensed one, they're typically well-made, feature high-quality art, and are a really nice size for display. With all that in mind, for the right collector, I'd say there's really no better way to decorate your space than an anime wall scroll. Thanks for watching. I hope you've learned something interesting about the history of wall scrolls and how they relate to anime. If you liked this video, you could leave a like or subscribe. I'd really appreciate it, and it'll encourage me to make more videos like this one. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day.